I enjoyed that fight. I am not a fan of the showboating fighter. I don't like the lackadaisical kind of approach to press. I don't like the entitled, even if you have a title. I don't like the entitled attitude. And this is not specific to Boots. I'm saying that he is a generational attitude and he
Yes.
is a talented guy. And it is, if I'm honest, some trait of black fighters who are talented and slick and have the potential to dominate weight classes, that they have this whole era about them that is very familiar, and I'm not a big fan of it. So when you're in tough, when a guy comes to win, when he does the opposite of what you've trained for, which is what happened, do you make the adjustment? Do you tuck up? And, which is, I'm not criticizing a guy who gets defensive and starts to shut the action down because this fight ain't going the way it should go. So let me just slow the fight down, make it more boring. Let me just outclass the guy, stay outside, jab, tuck up, hold, push off, jab, big hands. That whole thing
Occasional
makes
counter.
sense. Occasional counter. That makes sense if you're trying to get to the W and you are facing something you're not expecting. To Boot's credit because I love to watch this kind of fight, probably to the chagrin of his father in the corner. He was game. He was like, okay, okay, let's go. That fight was entertaining. Where they were criticizing Corinne for being boring the first time out, Boots had every excuse to make it boring this time out. And instead of doing that, he mixed it up. It reminded me a lot of the Crawford Postal fight. Not that the styles were the same, but I thought the situation was the same. Postal brought more than Crawford was expecting. He was landing on Crawford, making the fight tough. And midway through the fight, Crawford was like, man, fuck this. He tucked up and made and dominated the second half of the fight, but it wasn't exciting. He wasn't taking chances. He was no longer, I don't think, trying to knock Postal out. He cruised his way to a win. And for me on that day, I criticized him for that because
I
he's supposed
remember.
to be the killer.
I
You know what I
remember.
mean?
You
And I
said
want to see that
you
killer
were
instinct.
walking back to the car at the MGM and you told me people like a finisher, Sean. And
Right?
and so when the pay-per-view numbers came, and that was the last time he didn't get a knockout until August against Madrigal.
Right.
So he must
Right.
have heard you from miles away in the
No,
MGM
because he
booth.
is a killer and he'll
Yeah,
never
yeah.
admit it because, who would? But I think he looked back on that night the way I looked on the night at the time. Like, I could have finished this guy. Like, he was probably bored watching the fight if he ever even rewatched it. He is that. And I think Keyshawn, to Boot's credit, in that moment, he did that thing. He made this a scrap. He's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Then we're going to do this. Yes, his defense was porous. Yes, there are definitely adjustments to make, but this is the kind of fight you need to be in. You need to be in a tough fight. You are the IBF title holder, and you should be defending that title vigorously and showing us who you really are. This is the bottleneck phase where you start to define yourself. And in that moment with Crawford, I thought he misdefined himself. And I think, as to your point, every fight since then, he's been redefining who he really is. That Postal fight was disappointing to me. When Boots was met with that moment, he met the moment with who Boots really is. And now I don't think a fighter like that will get him in that kind of frustrated trouble. Not that he was in trouble like he was hurt and, going to lose, but he was frustrated and he had to figure that out. And I think he took more punches than he would have wanted to take. And the fight was in jeopardy at any time because, Karen can't punch. Like, you catch him one good time on temple or one hard shot on the chin that, credit to Boots' chin, but anybody can go down from a good punch. And Karen was landing some good shots. And I'm just happy that Boots was there for it, entertain the fans, and that's what'll bring them back out in Philly and fill that arena again.
Yeah, unfortunately for Jaron, the comparison you draw with the Postal fight is, that was a undefeated versus undefeated unification, not a
Fair.
mandatory title defense. A guy that you're expected to vanquish a second time around, a guy who you had 12 rounds of analysis to know what you have to shore up. And Chukhadzhian actually wound up winning more rounds than he did in the first fight, and this was a better fight to watch for sure than the first fight. And he took advantage of, because Boots didn't get better from fight number one, and
Mm.
he still didn't cut off the ring. He still got a little fat on his punches, but Boots is so dangerous even while making those mistakes that Chukhadzhian would only take so many chances here and there because Ennis showed a good chin to his credit. I know Chukhadzhian's
Hmm.
not known as a puncher, but he was hitting him way too clean as the fight went on. And Boots was not worried about that. And sometimes you got a good poker face, but your legs, your knees will give you away. They were fine. So that's
Hmm.
one kind of silver lining is it looks like at welterweight he could take a good shot.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
and
you don't
you
want to
say
be
he's
right.
not worried about that. I just don't believe that anybody likes getting hit. And you
No.
may not be, yes, but again, that's the dog in you, right? Like, okay, I'm willing to
But
take
he's
this
from
shot.
Philly, man. Like
Right.
I
Fair
saw
enough.
someone mention in my comments, they were like, I've been saying it. He's like Meldrick Taylor. Like Meldrick Taylor was a dude with, you know better than me. He ridiculous speed, could
Hmm.
offensively create whatever he wanted at any moment because he had that Ferrari. And
Hmm.
but just because you have that Ferrari doesn't mean you have to run all the red lights and drive reckless. Sometimes you could
Fair.
just, you know,
Right.
what's ironic for Boots is so much of what I think, being an armchair quarterback would have made the fight easier for him is the stuff Bam Rodriguez did right before him. And
Bam was the star of the week.
him and Keyshawn. I think they share the stage. But
I'm unwilling to accept the Keyshawn fight
right,
for
we don't accept
analysis.
that as a boxing guy. Got you. But he, but but again, look at Rodriguez. Like he can do kind of a lot of the things Ennis does too. He could pivot out and do all these crazy things with his feet and move and punch at the same time and create openings that other fighters simply can't create. They're not that dynamic and as talented as they are. But Bam forced, up against a mover is like, I'm just going to keep my feet tight because Ennis's base gets wide a lot. And I'm just going to keep my feet tight, high guard it, not do a whole lot outside of that high guard. And then when I've laid the table, set the foundation, when I found this guy on my jab, when I've touched that body, when I've made him slow down his movements, then I can hit the little pivot and hit the uppercut and close the show. But he it was like he ate his vegetables before he got to his dessert. And Jaron Ennis just wanted to get right to all the fun stuff, all the flashy stuff. And
Yeah.
it's like, man, tighten up the guard a little bit, tighten up the feet. He's got a great jab. Use your jab and
And I
create
had
openings off
Karen
the
winning the
jab. You don't
12th
have to
round.
pull out
Like,
all the special effects all the time. And yeah,
I'll confess I don't have a scorecard on the fight. Like, I don't know who
it's like
won
eight
more
four
rounds.
nine three.
Yeah, but I thought Karen won the 12th round.
He
I
did.
thought there were a lot of
And
close
the 11th.
rounds. Yeah, I mean, closing the fucking show with big shots, with excellent work. You can't just take for granted that because no shot before has hurt you, that no shot coming will hurt you. To your point, okay, Karen's not known as a big puncher, but when you hit somebody that clean, that consistency, and it didn't look like either, like to your point, maybe Boots wasn't worried about it or he just didn't have an answer for it. But I don't believe he was just happy to take those shots. I think he was getting caught and he's
Oh,
just
absolutely. Yeah,
better.
because he hasn't been fundamentally sound as of late, at least.
But
I mean,
that's hubris. See, that's the thing I'm
yes,
talking
yeah,
about.
yeah.
That's why I say Bam wins the week. And yes, listen, just so you know, this is no disrespect to Keyshawn. I'm making a point
Yeah, of
that
course.
I don't want to talk it up because it was massively impressive, but I just don't want to encourage the next guy to take that massive disadvantage
Set that
because
precedent.
Keyshawn, yeah, I don't want to set that precedent because Keyshawn was so damn impressive. I think Bam, to me, performed in a way that was absolutely perfect. I
Perfect.
mean, it was perfect. The attitude about it, the execution,
Professional.
professional as hell, did exactly what he needed to do, nothing more, nothing less, and broke down an excellent fighter who had been in with champions multiple times and never been stopped and got rid of that guy like he was a novice. Not because he was a novice, but like a novice because Bam came in there so sharp on his game, not wasting a breath, a step, a punch, a
Yeah, yeah.
second.
Yep.
not distracted by anything, not even willing to celebrate too early. Not when he knew it was going his way, did he throw an extra shot.
Because to that point, Ennis was distracted. He
Yeah.
oftentimes wasn't even making eye contact with his dad in the corner. He, as the fight went on, he let his body language be visible to everybody. Hey, everybody, I'm frustrated. Hey,
Mhm.
everyone, I'm frustrated. And hey, ref, he's holding me, and those are
You know
lapses
what?
in concentration and focus.
I also want to credit him. I'm glad you said that because it reminded me of something that when he knocked Karen down, or Karen took the knee,
Yeah,
Boots could have stepped in with an extra shot and he would have got away with it. He would have got DQ'd. It might have like finished Karen, you know what I mean? And he stopped punch mid throw, which fighters can do. It's not an easy thing to do, but you can do it. He had enough time to stop, but he also was enough in the motion of throwing the punch that if he had hit him, the referee wasn't going to DQ him, and he would have potentially maybe gotten a stoppage. I really credit him for being a class act, a good sportsman, having integrity, and not throwing that extra shot. So I think that is worth a mention.
yeah, and I'm totally not selling my Jaron Ennis stock now. Now there's concern there because this is the ages you got to be getting better, and unfortunately for him, he didn't really have the slew of opponents that sharpen the blade. He's been able to
Mm.
get by on talent and athleticism, and in some ways has regressed a little bit these last two fights. Hasn't looked like superb since the Roy Monvia fight that he back on Showtime. But I still can't sell my stock on him, Raheem, because he has things that
Are
are
we talking
rare.
about Boots?
Boots, yeah, like he's got gifts
No.
that don't grow on trees, man. He's got the shit we're talking about. It does need to be tightened up and shored up, but that can
Yeah.
be fixed in the gym with technical stuff. Although clock is ticking, you got to get it
I,
done. But his
I think his
gifts,
stock goes up, and I appreciate what you're saying about the
yeah,
level of competition. Like, yes, it shouldn't have been that hard. But what elevates his stock for me was the way he handled adversity. We all know the cliche that styles make fights. Well, he prepared for one style and got a different style, which made it more difficult to execute the game plan that he had in mind, and he needed to make adjustments. Some were made, some were not. But the one thing that he definitely decided consciously to do was to fight and to get to what he hoped would be a stoppage by working towards that stoppage, taking chances to get that stoppage, and keeping this fight entertaining and being a champion. Like, he's not gonna relent or wilt, because in that, if he had gotten confused or frustrated or been like, man, maybe I'll play the prevent defense, then maybe Corinne does win just enough rounds to edge it, or catches him on the defensive side with something he doesn't see coming and hurt him. The fact that he decided to approach that situation the way he did, that is what raises his stock for me. And he's more than a prospect. He's a champion, but he's still on his way up. We're still learning these kind of things about him. So what I learned about him on Saturday night, I really liked. That makes his stock up in my book.
I think the reason why people would have a stock down is just that natural talent. You want to see it optimized, and it wasn't optimized. And so people are, even me, in judging his performance, giving him some critiques. It's just because it looks like you're capable of so much more if you combine getting back to the fundamentals and combining it with all the special effects. Like I said this in the instant reaction, like Floyd Mayweather would say, this guy's straight up and down, no special effects. Well,
Mm,
he could use a little bit more straight up and down. He's leaning up. He wants to get
yes.
to those special effects a little bit too
This
much
is
right
what I opened the conversation with, that I don't like about certain fighters that have this kind of attitude and air about them, and then want to go in there and showboat and do all the special effects. That's a good way to put it. And think that they don't need the straight up and down because they have that many bells and whistles. And it's not unlike you and I, in a sense, because there are other people with bigger names or bigger profiles I could do this show with. You have the skill to do this thing all by yourself. You don't even need me. But I don't like when fighters say that they fight to their competition, when a promoter puts that excuse forward as acceptable. It's not. Like, you should fight at the highest of your ability, no matter who's across the ring from you.